Hello, friends of ARC. Thank you so much for stopping by today and joining us for the season 2 premiere of the ARC series. My name is Christina Ndaya, and I'm one of the co-founders.
I'm Young. I'm also one of the co-founders of ARCC.
Nice. And in this series, we'll be joined by special guests, Asian Canadians who we believe are amazing inspirations in our communities. In each episode, we will be highlighting an Asian cuisine that we have delivered to our guests from local Asian restaurants. Our hope is that in these sessions, we get to engage in fun conversations about our Asian Canadian experiences over food, because hey, why not? What a better way to capture our cultures and cultivate meaningful relationships than with food. So today we are very excited to have a very special guest be joining us, representing the City of Toronto, Ward 13 of Toronto Centre, one of Toronto's finest. Please give it up for Councillor Kristyn Wong-Tam. Woo!
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really excited about lunch.
Thank you. So a quick bio about Councillor Wong-Tam. So Kristyn Wong-Tam was elected to Toronto City Council in 2010 and has an extensive career in investing in the city through both the public and private sectors. Her contributions have led to the development and support of improved social planning programs, new affordable housing, innovative economic development programs, community art projects, and investments in diverse family-friendly neighborhood planning. So she has also led efforts to defend the rights of tenants to obtain affordable and decent standards of rental housing, and helped create a neighborhood association to preserve and protect heritage buildings and historical landscapes in the ward. I think that's very, very important because rents right now is a huge problem in Toronto as well. So also Kristyn is currently the chair of the Toronto Accessibility Advisory Committee, which provides advice to City Council on the identification, prevention, and elimination of barriers faced by people with disabilities, with the goal of achieving social, cultural, and economic well-being. So Kristyn is also a founding board member of the Toronto Biennial of Arts and was voted Toronto's best city councillor by Now magazine readers for 5 times. So wow, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. You need to take a breath. That was a long introduction. And it's great to be here with the both of you.
We're very, very happy to have you here as well. Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, and we're so honored to have you here. So in this segment at this time, we'll be showing off our lunches and basically where we got it from. Councillor, if you want to go first.
Okay, so I have to confess, I had congee for breakfast today. And for those of you who really love congee, you should know it's a comfort food. So my congee was homemade and I had preserved egg, which is pretty, for someone who was first generation, that's pretty much a big deal for me to cut that egg and put it in there myself. But also I had some thinly sliced pork, and I seasoned with ginger. Of course, you can't have congee in the wintertime without ginger. So I can't show it to you because I ate it already. That was breakfast. So I decided to go a little bit lighter for lunch just because I also ate it with a fried donut. You know, those nice, greasy, savory donuts that you have to have with congee. So for my lunch, I'm actually going with something different. It is a sweet potato salad. I have arugula and some very nice tempeh, which of course is that delicious protein substitute. And what else do I have in here? I've got roasted pumpkin seeds and an Asian balsamic drizzle. So that's the Asian theme of my salad, and I'm looking forward to eating it. And of course, there is a potential liability here. Eating salad on camera could cause all sorts of embarrassing moments, including, of course, green leaves stuck in teeth. So you two have to be my friends. You let me know if I get any green leaves stuck in my teeth. But I'm looking forward to lunching with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, you have gone the healthy route, which I wish I should have done earlier when I decided to order my food. And plus, I love congee, and especially when my mom cooked it like chicken congee, and when I have it with the donut fritter on the side, it is everything. And yes, it includes ginger, I promise you. So in terms of my food, I kind of went all out because part of me is very lazy to cook dinner and too lazy to wash the dishes because, you know, adulting. So to start off, this is actually from Kin Sushi because I'm currently living on res at York University. So I decided to get takoyaki for starters.
Delicious.
And then I have assorted aburi torch sushi.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And
Oh, I
then
wish this was a potluck.
if only, hey, who knows, maybe in the future.
Yes.
And this is, if anything, this is practically my dinner. So this is like, one of them is a killer shrimp roll and the other one is a magma roll. So all kinds of yummy goodness.
Do you have roommates? That's a lot of food.
Oh no, this is for me and myself and I.
You know what? You have one of those expandable Asian stomachs. You know the ones I'm talking about, where just things just keep going in, and you're like, I don't know how it happens, but I could still eat.
Exactly. And plus, if anything, I just gave up eating red meat for Lent. So this is like my alternative.
Yum.
April, what do you have for lunch?
So for me, I'm also doing Japanese food, but I'm not doing sushi because it's cold, and I have some lady issues. So no cold food because, you know, that's what your elders tell you, don't drink cold drinks or have cold food, you know, at that monthly period of time. So I first got some fried chicken, Japanese chicken. I can't remember what it's called at the top of my head. But that smells very good.
Karage.
Yes, karage. Thank you. So I had some karage chicken. There's 3 pieces, very nice. And I also got a ramen. So this is the black tonkatsu. I'm trying not to spill it over my computer. But yes, with an egg, some chashu, and I like my noodles very, very soft. So that's also soft noodles.
Ramen is harder to share, but good for you.
Thank you. And also like a reminder, when I eat ramen, it might, you know, it's like having spaghetti pasta on your first date. It's not recommended because you get like all that sauce all over you. So it's the same with ramen.
But even better, April, that you're not wearing eyewear. And then you come up all steamy, right?
Yes. I'm very lucky to not have glasses. So so at least I've got that going for me. But yeah, so I got my food from Ikusha. So it's a ramen restaurant downtown in, I think, close to Chinatown. This is the second time I've had them. So they're actually quite good. So I'm quite excited for lunch.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very nice. And we shall eat.
Yes. Let's begin.
Yeah,
Chopsticks.
let's might as well take the first bite too.
So, Councillor, do you have like a set time for lunch, or do you just eat whenever?
I eat when I can. Sometimes it's in between meals, and oftentimes it's so sad. It's not glamorous at all. If you want a glamorous life, boys and girls, don't be a city councillor, don't be a politician, or at least not at the municipal level. Only because I'm oftentimes eating at my desk in front of a computer. And sometimes I'm literally eating as I'm walking down the hall to another meeting, just because there isn't a heck of a lot of time. If I want to make sure I meet my calendar obligations, sometimes I have 12 meetings a day. Quite honestly, it's too many, but if I don't try to take my constituency call or my regular meetings with city staff, or perhaps just trying to make projects work and make projects go, it takes too long to sort of get to the work. So I'm constantly feeling like I'm running behind. And that may be just because I represent one of the busiest parts of the busiest city in Canada.
Yeah,
my salad's really good, by the way.
Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
Where did you get your salad from?
So interestingly enough, it's Aroma.
Oh,
Yeah, so they have obviously it's a franchise cafe. It's right around the corner from City Hall. I find that their food is really fresh, really healthy, and they have been infusing like little Asian themes in there. So I kind of dig it.
mhm. That's quite
Very-
interesting. There's an aroma near my workplace. I'm obviously working from home right now, but when I
Mhm.
go back to the workplace, I have an aroma cafe as well at the
Yeah.
building. So
Nice.
I'll try
Yeah,
that.
the best part about eating a salad for lunch is that it doesn't matter if it gets cold.
Oh, very
That's
true.
true. That's very true. And also for sushi as well, right? Like, because I'm sure you're
True.
maybe
Yeah, I
not
really
the
love.
other one, but
Oh, sorry.
no, go
I was
ahead.
I really love the new phase of sushi that Toronto's been embracing, that torched sushi. It is the bomb. I wasn't 100% sold on it when I first heard about, why are you flaming up all the sushi? But now that I've had that sort of beautiful charcoal taste just at the top, yeah, I can't really go back.
I totally agree with you on that. Yeah. And I haven't even tried this Mayaburi sushi yet, so I'm very excited too. And just to kick things off, Counselor, if you don't mind, we're all wondering, what is your favorite comfort food?
My favorite comfort food, I gave you a hint, it's congee, but
Okay.
I also love anything soupy. So wonton soup, anything with noodles and soup. And it doesn't matter how across the Asian diaspora, I just find soup so comforting. I also love spicy food. So, if it sits at the medium level to sort of hot level to burn your face off, and emergency room level, I'm there. So oftentimes the spicier the better. Which is, I hear it's not great for me in the long run, but I gotta tell you, it's so delicious. And maybe it's because I kind of like the heat. Like, I don't mind getting into sometimes heated situations. I've seen myself as an advocate for community members, and for issues that what I would call social injustices. So I wonder if that might be why I'm interested in the heat. My mom, both my parents are from Hong Kong. I was born in Hong Kong, and no one else in my family is really a spicy eater. And certainly my mom was really moderate when it came to even spicy food or even salt, to be quite honest. So I'm, somewhere along the way, growing up in the most multicultural city in the world, having access to all this amazing cuisine, especially Asian cuisine, like right across the diaspora, it's really hard not to lean into it. So now I just embrace it until one day when my doctor says, okay, no more, we're cutting you off. I will wait till that appointment. But between now and then, while he's not saying anything, I'm just going to keep going.
That's fair enough. We have actually the same background. I'm also from Hong Kong. Both my parents are from Hong Kong. In terms of spices, actually, my dad really likes spicy, but my mom does not touch spice at all. So yeah. Growing up, I didn't really eat spicy food either. So, but I went to the UK to do my undergraduate, and then I started, being independent. And then some of my friends started eating spicy, and I just tried it. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. But then with spicy food, that's the thing. Like, it hooks you, and then you have to keep eating spicier and spicier and spicier. So like at one point, I got to this level where I was I was trying to do a soup, like a Sichuan spicy soup, but I accidentally used the hot pot base for the Sichuan spicy to make the soup. It was just too much. So my friend and I, we were like, oh my God, that's too much. And we were like, okay, maybe we should take a step back from eating too much spicy food right now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I completely understand you. I get you.
Yeah, it's part of you end up finding the spicy people in the world, right? So I love going to eat with friends who love spicy food, just because we're all, no one's concerned. We just order the spicy dishes. Especially when you're sharing at a big round table. I love food that you can share. I feel like it really brings us closer together. Like, not only are we just having conversation, and the conversations are more intimate because you're sort of leaning in, you're helping each other, pass along the food. It just really creates that sort of family bond, even if they're not family style eating. Love it.
Yeah, and definitely. And I agree with you in so many levels, especially whether by having that when we're gathering, whenever I hang out with my family or even with my friends who I've seen as a close family ties type of vibe. It's something that I really love. And going back to the spiciness, growing up in a Filipino household, we would have seasoning, but the spicy levels, it's just we try to stay away from it at all costs. So for me, when I met my partner, he basically exposed me to his Korean background, and because it basically involves a lot of spiciness. Even though it was so good, it really took me quite some time for me to develop my tolerance for spiciness. And overall, it was just so good and comforting.
Yeah, Korean food. Every dish is red. It's like my favorite.
Yeah, definitely. It's the gochujang, it's the spiciness, and it's just really, really attracts you to have more.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. And April, do you want to ask the next question?
So very, very typical question, I'm sure, for you, but for our audience, for anyone who doesn't know, what made you decide to pursue municipal politics and become a city councillor for your local riding?
Oh, April, that's a question I can answer quite honestly from my heart. I really am moved by injustice. So sometimes you get upset when you see things that seem unfair. Growing up as a working class immigrant, English is not my first language. My parents are very working class. Regent Park, which is one of the largest sort of government social housing communities in North America, was my first home. And I remember very clearly, not understanding that I was poor. Like I just didn't know, because I had love in the family, and mom and dad were always making sure that we had, clean clothes. They weren't fancy, and if they were torn, they were mended. And as a young child growing up with such extreme poverty, not knowing was a blessing. My parents sheltered me from that. But as I got older, I realized that there were other people in our community, including my own family, that was hurting from the fact that mom and dad worked at tremendous hours just to sort of scrape by. There were no extracurricular activities really afforded to me, just because we couldn't afford those private lessons, this or that. And so I learned very quickly that the city was divided between those who had access to money, who had access to wealth and access to privileges that opened doors, and others like mine who were not. All my neighbors, most of them, were people of color, especially other Asian families. And we sort of huddled together to take care of our own. But there were some very difficult times, and difficult sacrifices had to be made. So I've always felt, as a kid who grew up with the public school system, public library, that I wanted to make sure that the next generation and the generation after that was going to have access to the opportunities that I did. So my fight coming to city council here was largely in support of public services, public swimming pools, public libraries, public transportation. My family never had a car until I was 21 years old, actually. And I was the first person in my family to have a car. So that means my mom, my dad, my grandmother, who's living with us, 3 daughters, so all 6 of us together. If we needed to go anywhere as a family, we would all pile on to the streetcar or the bus. And if the TTC, the Toronto Transit System, if it didn't go to that location, didn't go to that destination, we wouldn't go, right? We just couldn't get there, and no one was going to pay for a cab. So I really value the public services that have been given me an opportunity in life. And I do know that, as of late, we've seen governments roll back on public services, meaning that they want to privatize these services. They think that, for-profit companies can deliver better resources and outcomes. But for those who can't afford it, it means that they're not going to be given the chance to succeed. And that really is really heartbreaking. So really, in short strokes, I came to city council, came to municipal politics, is because of my love for public services. I want every kid to have the same opportunity that I did. And I know that it's really hard because governments are now forced to look at private contracting, look at, making sure that publicly funded organizations, services, the quality is eroding because there's so much pressure to privatize.
Oh, wow. And thank you so much for sharing that, Councillor. It really hits so much close to home, especially with public services too. It's something that I rely on and a big fan of, because basically originally I didn't even want to get my license because of public transit, because I still rely on it. And given with my original local riding in the typical lakeshore, it's like, what's the point of me trying to get a license and buy a car and get everything that comes included with it? Just and basically on my end, it's very sad to me that there will always be pressures of trying to privatize. But why would you try to privatize something if it's still going good so far, if it's still benefiting everyone else? They didn't, from my understanding, it's like they want to privatize how can they make it more accessible to everybody else who can't even afford it, in case if the fares go high or any kind of changes that goes on with public service.
Yeah, for sure. And some things shouldn't be privatized, like, for example, utilities, gas, water. Like, I don't want to pay big business, the opportunity to drink water that can be drawn from the lake, right? So we make it safe, and I don't want any big company that's going to cut back on safety measures because it will, make their profits bigger. So I hear you. This is an important issue, and one that I know that is really impactful in different ways. So, for example, working class, struggling families, poor families, when they get on the TTC, they have to make that choice, because sometimes they have to decide between TTC and food, right? And unfortunately, the further out of the core of the city that you live, the more expensive it is for you and your family to travel. So I know that my mom and dad, they were able to sort of get to their low paying, like I'm talking about low paying jobs, because of the TTC. So making sure that, the TTC is there as a public common to be shared for all of us, because it enables economic productivity, is absolutely critical. And it's incredibly expensive, and getting more expensive.
Yeah. One thing about TTC, I think that strikes me as very interesting. I think there's statistics that saying that TTC is one of the public transportation systems that are the most heavily, like, privately funded, like that rely on the funds, like the fare payments, instead of being like funded by government, which is kind of crazy, because as a city, like, you need a well-developed public transport system. Otherwise, you can't be a world-class city. That's in my point of view. So it just baffles my mind. And then you go to New York, and although, like, New York's, like, subway system is so old, like, some of it's falling apart, but, like, they still have a very well maintained, and it's massive. And it's not that expensive compared to Toronto, because you could go to so many other places. So for me, that baffles my mind. And now with oil prices, like, going up, like, people are relying more and more on public transport. So it makes me very angry as well. Like,
For sure. Yeah, and I should clarify that my first car when I was 21 years old was a 1986 Chrysler Reliant station wagon. So just imagine this big, long sort of matchbox station wagon, and it was burgundy in color, and it had wood paneling on the side. So it's all I can tell you, I was not a cool kid, but it was big, and I can carry supplies in it. And I was working in my my dad's restaurant at that time. He opened a restaurant a year earlier, and I couldn't lug the groceries or buy supplies on transit. I just couldn't. So my dad was relying on me to go get supplies for the restaurant, and I had to get my license. In order to help him in the restaurant. And this is such a typical immigrant story. I feel like so many of us have lived that experience where mom and dad don't speak English, and we have to help them out. And so literally I was put in a situation where my dad was running the back of house, so he was managing and working in the kitchen. And he said to me, he's like, I can't do this. He can't operate this restaurant if I don't help him. So I put my life on hold to help him. And then I had to go get my driver's license, because I had to go get a car too. These are the stories that I know are so common in working class families, and really common in Asian families as well. Obviously, it doesn't always have to be a restaurant. But our responsibility to stick around and help our parents out is absolutely critical, just to their well-being in Canada, especially if they're not English speakers, right? And if they don't read English. I remember very early on, I think, I was 6 years old. We had been in Canada for 2 years, and I started taking care of my younger sister who started school. And my job as a 6-year-old was walking my sister, who was the 4-year-old, to and from school. I had to be responsible for her. Can you imagine? So a 6-year-old walking a 4-year-old down the street, making sure that the 4-year-old got to school. And, you know, I know my story is not that unique. I totally get it. Especially from a working class perspective, is that we sort of just take care of our own. And I think that today's standards, like, you know, you probably imagine, what is a 6-year-old walking down the street by themselves with a little 4-year-old in tow? But that's exactly what we did to survive, right? Because mom and dad wasn't going to be around. And I had to, as the eldest in the family, take care of my younger sister. So, you know, it's those type of experiences that have stayed with me for my entire life. And I think now about, you know, making sure that families have access to high quality daycare, making sure that, you know, all the kids have an opportunity to play. That was a lot of responsibility for my part as a 6-year-old. I shouldn't have had to take that on, but I took it on because no one else was able to do it because they had to go work and put food on the table. But it also meant that part of my childhood was probably taken away from me, right? Because I was so busy taking care of my younger sister.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And it does feel like part of your childhood has been taken away from you. It's like you had to become an adult at a very young age just to look out for one another and making sure that your family is safe and able to live day by day.
Yeah, totally. And you know, this is why I say I know that my story is not that unique, because a lot of working class families, that's what happens. The eldest kid takes care of the next one and take care of the next one. And that's because there isn't high quality childcare, or there isn't great after school programs. And not everybody's so fortunate to have one parent at home when you come home. And I also know that, you know, especially within the Asian Canadian community, there's a lot of students who come in from abroad. So, you know, international students pay an arm and a leg to get a Canadian education because it is, you know, technically prestigious. But while they're here, they're also left to, you know, all sorts of potential exploitation. I mean, hopefully everyone is safe and everyone is settled and supported, but I also know that's not always the case. And those students don't always have access to resources. They don't always have access to, you know, the proper authorities that can give them a handout. And sometimes the programs that are sort of built in Toronto or built in Canada don't necessarily extend to nationals, right? International students. So it's a hard one, and I do see it. Like, I entirely see it.
Yeah, definitely. And this actually ties in with our next question, actually. And we're just wondering, how has your heritage as an Asian Canadian impacted your life decisions and beliefs?
I'm of the same school and mindset as Sandra Oh. It's a damn pleasure and a privilege to be Asian. I really just so am deeply connected to my culture. It's hard because I also don't speak Cantonese the way I used to. Because at one point in time, English was my second language. Now, Cantonese has become my second language, even though it was my first. But I do find it to be an immense pleasure to come from a history and a culture that's so rich and deep. Like, when I think back to, you know, the Chinese influence on the world, with the years of discovery and innovation and inventions, everything from paper to noodles to, you know, you name it. There was a touch, right? There was some type of influence. So I know that our civilization goes back tens of years, tens of thousands of years, and I entirely get that. But coming to the West, you kind of start all over, right? So all of a sudden, you come from a real rich, you know, old civilization, and your history is so strong and your culture is so deep, and you come to the West and, you know, they don't value it. And if anything, they try to, you know, sort of shun you from that. So growing up in Canada in the 1970s, yes, I am old, but in the 70s in the East End, it was also horribly racist. So there was organizations like the Heritage Front and other white supremacist akin organizations that would just really be terrorizing people of color. My friend who was Indian, she had her house basically, you know, bags of we're all eating, but let's just say bags of doggy doo was thrown at her window. I had another friend who, you know, not even, I mean, when I say friend, I'm saying kids in my school, right? Like their families were also attacked. You know, someone set their front yard and garbage cans on fire, told them to go home, go back to China. So these are real experiences, and Toronto seems like a really accepting and fantastic place. And in so many ways it is, and it has evolved dramatically since those days. But that's what I grew up with. And I do remember very clearly feeling like a fish out of water when I first got here. Everything was different. I didn't speak the language. And I really struggled to understand my place in Canadian society. So can you imagine, fast forward all these years, Kristyn Wong-Tam is now a city councillor, one of 25 in the most diverse city in the world. I hold a elected office as a position. It's the greatest honor of my life, to be quite honest, serving the public and representing my communities at City Hall. But I know that I benefit from my working class roots, and even my parents who fought so hard to give me the life and my sisters the life that they wanted us to have. And they made tremendous sacrifices for us to have that life. So no matter how far I go, and I hope to go as far as anybody wants their kid to go. My mom's like, go, 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 keep going. I'm also incredibly touched by, you know, everybody who came before me. And I do strongly believe I stand on the shoulder of giants, especially Asian women who never get the credit, who are oftentimes told that they don't belong anywhere but the kitchen. So being able to be outspoken and to stand up for what I believe is right is important. And I'm so privileged to be able to represent, you know, our community at City Hall. Whether you agree with my politics or not, what really matters is that we're here. Like a couple of us are here. And if it wasn't me or you know, a few other colleagues of Chinese background, there will be no representation. And even then it's not enough. Like there has never been an Indigenous city councillor or an Indigenous mayor. You know, and we can name so many other cultures and nationalities and ethnicities that have never, ever been represented at city council. And this is the most diverse city in the world. So we've got work to do.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. Man, I was about on the verge of tears as you were talking on, because like it hits so close to home with me when you said that Asian women, especially our mothers, do not get enough credit. And for that, I wholeheartedly agree. And especially with my mom, I can't give her enough credit, because honestly, I just tell people this: if it weren't for my mother, I would be a hot mess. And that is the truth. And plus being able to see our mothers like growing up to where we are heading, it's in a way, it's like they're living their wildest dreams in something they thought was impossible. We made it possible. So I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, and thank your mom for me.
No,
She sounds like a remarkable human being.
for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Moms. Yeah.
Yeah, my mother made a great sacrifice as well, because my background, well, I guess it might be close to a lot of Hong Kong immigrants to Canada. So I came here when I was very young with my mom. We immigrated here. She kind of uprooted her life to take me here so we could get our citizenship. And then, you know, once we got it, something happened back in Hong Kong. So we had to go back. And then she decided to stay back in Hong Kong. And I decided to, you know, check out how Canada is, because it's been a while since I was here. But thinking back, like I realized, like when I was younger, I also benefited from ignorance, because I didn't realize how much my mom had given up just to, you know, come over here and start a whole new life with her child. My dad didn't come with us, so it was just her and me. So now that I moved here by myself, I realized how difficult it is to be an immigrant, because if you did, luckily I have an uncle here, But if I had no family, it's very hard to make friends. It's very hard to find resources. Even though like my English is okay, like it's pretty good, it's still very hard to access resources for immigrants. I did my master's here, and even with the master's program, like they didn't tell you what you should do after, or when you get a job, what you should do to get, I know how to get a license, but what do you do when you get a car, right? Like how you get insurance, like all that kind of stuff. Like when you're an immigrant, it's so hard because there's nobody there to help you or to tell you, and your parents' experience doesn't really do much because their experience is in a different country, right? So then I realized, oh my God, my mom, when she came here, she must have, she had to do everything by herself because I was a kid, I couldn't do anything. So yeah, like I think our parents, immigrants' parents, like definitely, like they have to like sacrifice a lot as well, to make a good life for themselves and for their kids. But yeah, and my second, like when I was listening to your words, my second kind of question that popped up, that's kind of outside of our scope, but I really wanted to know, like, I'm sure you've experienced like discrimination, but like while like when you're in your position right now, like do you still like encounter discrimination, or yeah, just
Yeah, April, thank you. I feel like I have to answer this question carefully, but I'm only gonna ever answer honestly, because I only want to live my life in the light. Yes, I do face discrimination, despite the fact that, technically I hold not technically, I do hold a seat in government. I'm technically one of the most powerful people in the city. But that also means that I'm reliant on others. And I know that, I've been underestimated as an Asian Canadian person. I have met people within the corporation of the City of Toronto who just marvel at my high quality English. I've met people who just ask me questions such as, where's your accent? I have, I've been in environments where my staff may be a white male, taller than myself. I'm 5'5", right? And he's greeted at important VIP functions before I'm greeted, and I'm the counselor. So yeah, so I think, it's so critically important for Asian women, non-binary people to stand up, to be heard, to be counted, to be seen, because that's not where we're supposed to be. And I really, I really encourage, young Asian women in particular, to speak up where you can, when you can, and to go beyond what's comfortable, because it's not supposed to be comfortable for us, because they haven't made it comfortable. So if we're to advance, we're going to have to move out of that comfort zone and move out of the shadows and step into the light. I also think it's important for us to take up the microphone when we need to, go to the podium, speak from your heart. You can't go wrong. I guarantee you can't go wrong. And to sort of own that power and know that there are literally billions, billions of us who need to do the same. I have a young child now. He's a little boy. He's so sweet. And he's of mixed race background. So Indian, Dutch, and Chinese. And I know that he's already going to have some disadvantages just because his last name is Wong-Tam, and that gives away right away your ethnicity. He's not going to be able to pass as white like he is an Asian kid. But the one thing he's going to have is male privilege, right? For all intents and purposes. But it's the little girls I think about and little children, to be quite honest, who have to be protected. My mom was the glue in my family. She has a grade 6 education. My dad has a grade 4 education. They're both amazing, salt of the earth people. But my dad was a naval officer, and he was pretty stern. A loving man, but a few words. Whereas my mom was a garment worker. So she basically worked in factories, toiled away her entire life, never complained, just worked. You know, she was also the one that sort of pushed all her daughters, 3 daughters. She said to us, all my daughters, all my children are beautiful because mama is beautiful. That's how she was, like, right? And all my daughters are smart because mama is smart. I can't have, you know, children that are not beautiful. I can't have children that are not smart because I'm so beautiful and smart. So she gave herself permission to be who she is and was, despite the fact that she was a short Asian woman who worked in a factory, who was not very educated. She told us we had, you know, all the skills we needed, that we were fine in who we were just because she loved us. So that kind of reinforcement and affirmation that you get as a child is so critical. And I hope to give that to my son. And I hope to give that to my nieces and nephew, so that they know that they're loved. And it doesn't matter, you know, what language they speak and who they are, who their parents are, quite honestly, is that they just need to know that they're, you know, we believe in them. And that's what my parents gave me. And that's what my mom gave me.
Oh,
I know, moms.
your mom is a beautiful, resilient woman. Oh,
Yeah.
you're just about to bring me to tears again.
Yeah, she is a life force. I will admit, she's a life force.
Yeah, and in this case, with the next question, if you don't mind, since we're talking about like with 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 the Asian communities, especially here in Toronto, given what it is so diverse, in what ways can we help provide a resource to build our Asian Canadian communities?
Oh, that's such a good question. You know, I think a lot of us turn to the internet these days for answers. So having a resource that sort of tells us where things are, what services, you know, how to navigate them. System navigation is important. I think there are some pretty amazing organizations that serve Asian Canadians, or in my case, Chinese Canadians. Reach out to them, get to know them. Volunteer, people, volunteer, do some of this work. This is actually a great learning experience. Not only will you probably get some school credits, which I think are critical, so let's be practical Asians now, get your school credits, volunteers, learn some skills, friend up, get lots of new friends, because one thing I've learned about Asians when we get together and organize, we always finish with meals or we have food at the meetings. It's amazing. I have been to so many meetings that are not full of Asians and they don't feed you. Like, what the heck? Whereas when Asians get together to do work, there's always food, or there's food afterwards. So I highly recommend it. It's probably some of my best experiences is actually working with the Asian community. And in particular, I worked with the Chinese Canadian National Council, the Toronto chapter. It was a human rights organization in the city of Toronto, and we fought for racial justice and racial equality. It was probably some of the best politically sort of learning years that I had, just because I got to work in the Chinese community, and they were very generous because my Chinese is not good enough to go in front of a media camera with, so I don't really do a lot of online interviews in Cantonese. Because, you know, number one, you won't listen to me, and number two, you'll probably laugh because I'll get the words wrong. But what was really important is that I did it. So I did it even though it was outside my comfort level, and I got to speak to the issues that I know really made a difference in our community's, you know, day-to-day existence and quality of life. And it was actually, you know, I've lived long enough now to tell you that it was my best political development. It was the best time I had working with the Chinese Canadian National Council.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing. I just like when you said friend up, because now it's just making me think of that as a hashtag. especially when it comes to like volunteering and networking, honestly. And plus April can even add on to this too if she wants, especially when April and I, along with the few other co-founders of ARC, and when we start to build this organization up, honestly, it does always involve food at some point. And it does feel like it's kind of like a sisterhood, like we're all big one happy family, just able to check in with each other and from time to time see how we're doing. And just putting this all together makes it seem so worthwhile. And in case we need to bring home food, might as well too.
That's great advice.
Yeah, and totally, I sorry about that. I totally envy that about the Asian Resilience Collective. Like, I can see that it's led by dynamic Asian women. You guys are putting yourselves on the mark. You're saying what you need to say, and you're saying it for so many others who aren't saying it. So you are role models, and you're exciting, and your voices are need to be heard. And I'm just in awe of everything that you guys do, and for the reasons that you're doing it is so selfless. April, sorry I cut you off. I just wanted to just give you a big love.
Oh, thank you. We're very honored to hear that from you, because I think for all of us, for all of our 5 co-founders, you're one of our role models as well, because you're one of the few Asian Canadians in city council, in local, and even in national politics, right? Canadian politics, you don't really find a lot of Asian Canadians. So it's very, for us, and in the Equal Voice program, the DOV program, I think you were one of the very few Asian women politicians that were invited to give a speech. And I think when I saw you on our itinerary, I was like, I must listen to her, because I didn't even know there was the Asian Canadian or Chinese Canadian local politician in Toronto before DOV. So yeah, I was so blown away, and we're very happy to have you here today. But yeah, back to the question before, I was like, that's great advice, because we're building up our organization, and we want to know how to expand and how to help the communities better as well. So thank you for that. But yes, food is definitely a must, and we must get funding, more funding, to be able to provide food. Let's wrap up very quickly. How is your food?
My food is delicious. I have to say, I was so eager to talk to you. I didn't get to it, so I will definitely be eating in between my next meal. My next meeting. But it was such a pleasure to connect with you both and to hear more about your work. It would be fantastic, absolutely fantastic to be able to track your progress. I think you're onto something. I know you are, like, because you don't really, because this venue doesn't exist. And the fact that you could probably, in the age of sort of, digital media, you can go pan-national. I could see you actually transforming the lives of Asian women, Asian girls.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you again for joining us. Christina, do you have any last words?
Basically, like April, and on behalf of the co-founders and everybody here at ARC, thank you so much for what you do and for able to represent Asian Canadians like us on such a big scale, especially in the city of Toronto. Honestly, like I said this before, and I will say this again, you are one of my favorites, and I'm so honored and privileged to have you here with us.
Okay, well, let's definitely stay in touch. And if there's anything I can do to help your organization, put you in my newsletter. We reach out to 45,000 inboxes, I should say. I'm happy to plug you and just make sure we keep, helping each other. Like I always say, don't judge me on my success. Judge me on just judge me on the success of those around me. Because that's what I want. I want to make sure that if I got through that front door at City Hall, I'm going to blow open the window behind me, the sky roof, like all the doors. I want everybody else to come in.
Oh, thank you. That's such a great quote as well. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. And in terms of the food ratings, quickly for me, honestly, out of 5. I'm still going through the aburi sushi, and I already finished my takoyaki. Everything else will be for dinner. April, your turn.
Out of 5 for me as well. This is one of my favorite ramen restaurants. So if you're, around the neighborhood, give it a try.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 4.5, and it's not because it was a bad salad, but now that I'm seeing what you guys are eating, I have a little bit of buyer's remorse that I didn't go for sushi or ramen. But also very good. Support local small businesses, guys.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And thank you again so much and take care.